can introduce our speaker.
Great. Thank you so much. And we are delighted to have Dr. Marian Lewin, excuse me, and her topic is going to be empowering voters and defending democracy. Next slide, please, Marie. So Marian received a Bachelor's of Arts from the University of California, Davis, and both her master's and her PhD from the University of Wisconsin-Madison. She has served in several leadership positions for the League of Women Voters Wake, and since that's becoming a member in 1997. And she also served as the League of Women Voters in Wake County president from 2014 to 2019. She's currently vice president of the board of directors of the League of Women Voters of North Carolina, and she has worked extensively in the public policy area. Next slide, please. So you can see all of her accomplishments there. Even working for, in Warsaw, Poland, managing a cooperative agreement between the AFL-CIO and the Polish Workers' Union Solidarity. I thought that was wild. That is amazing. So thank you so much. And we recently heard that she was identified with an article in Ms. Magazine about an influential person regarding her work in North Carolina regarding voting during the COVID. And so with that, I welcome Dr. Marian Lewin, and we are very excited that you're here and look forward to her presentation.
Okay, that's the topic, voting and COVID-19. And I'm probably going to move through pretty quickly. If you have questions, you can ask them. If you want to save your questions till the end, that would be fine too. So next slide. Well, the first thing you want to consider, are you ready to vote? Make sure you are registered to vote. You can register to vote in North Carolina online if you have a North Carolina driver's license, or you can download the form, fill it in, and mail it in. Check to make sure that you're registered at your current address. You may have moved and not realized that you needed to update your address. It's very important that in North Carolina, you have to be registered to vote in the county of your residence. So if you moved from one county to another and you did not update your residence, you may be denied the ability to vote. Use the voter search tool, and I've got the URL there. And that is a wonderful URL to just have and check frequently. You can check get your sample ballot. You can find out what your polling place is. You can find out if what your absentee ballot return status is. If you want to try and figure out which jurisdiction you're in, who's your state legislator, who's your congressperson, that's a place to go. And we strongly recommend that you use your sample ballot and you use vote411.org to know what you're going to vote on. This is a very long ballot. North Carolina has a third longest ballot in the country, and it can be overwhelming if you haven't done any work to look at what's going to be on your ballot before you go in to vote. Next slide. We all need a voting plan. We're all anxious about the future, and we're certainly overwhelmed by current circumstances, be they health-related, economic, or currently the latest and the greatest in the political news coming out of both the state and the federal government. Having a plan makes safe voting possible. You can vote safely this year. Whoops. And so think about, what are your concerns? Are you worried about your health, the status of your health? Are you worried about your family or people you're in contact with? Think about what the greater needs of your household are as you start making that plan. Okay, now, do you want to vote in person or by mail? Both are good options. Voting in person starts on October 15th, which is in, 3 weeks. All our boards of elections in every county in the state are hard at work making sure in-person voting will be safe. Your voting plan. Vote by mail has started, and the local boards are sending out ballots to voters who've requested an absentee ballot, by mail ballot. You have to request the ballot before they'll send it to you. And there is an online portal that you can start using now to request your ballot if you haven't requested it already. It's really easy to use. You just put in your name, your address, and either your driver's license or your social security number, and they will tell you that you'll be getting your ballot in the mail. Okay, next slide. North Carolina has no excuse absentee voting. You don't have to worry about explaining to anyone why you want to vote absentee by mail. Think of applying for the absentee ballot as a protection plan. So even if you think you might want to vote in person, you can still go ahead and request an absentee ballot in case your personal circumstances change. You are not comfortable going out to vote in person, or there's some other change in your family status that you don't want to go out. But on the other hand, if you request a absentee ballot and they send it to you, you're not obligated to use it. You can still vote in person. And as long as you haven't voted that ballot and returned it and had that ballot accepted, you can still vote in person. Next. Okay, this year, you will only need one witness with the signature and the printed name and address on the return ballot envelope. Absentee ballot envelopes have a tracking barcode this year. And the State Board of Elections has contracted with a private mail tracking service called Ballot Tracks that will allow you to find out when your ballot was mailed to you. If you use mail in to return it, it will tell you that the mail has received your ballot and is processing it. And then it will also tell you what the disposition of your ballot is when it's been received and accepted. If you get notice either through Ballot Tracks or on Voter Search that your ballot has been accepted, you cannot go back and vote in person. Your name is removed from the poll book and you are marked as already having voted. Some people are asking about what happens to ballots once they come into the Board of Elections. When are they counted? Well, starting on Tuesday, those absentee ballots will be approved the accepted absentee ballots will be approved by the Board of Elections, and the envelopes will be opened. The ballots will be removed from the envelope, they will be scanned, and they will be tabulated. The final count with a report of can be done after the polls close on November 3rd at 7:30 p.m. So the good thing about voting early and having your ballot accepted early and approved and scanned early is that it means that on election night, all those votes will be in the unofficial election night results. And so that'll be very reassuring to everybody that, that we have a lot of votes that are already recorded. There was a question about witness. Yes, anybody over the age of 18 can be a witness. The person doesn't have to be a registered voter. The person doesn't have to even live in the state. And yes, a person can be related to you. It can be your spouse, your parent, your child, as long as they're over 18. The only exceptions on the witness are for candidates cannot be your witness unless, I guess, you're related to the candidate, then it's different. And the other exception is if you live in a nursing home or a certain covered assisted living facilities, staff, employees of the nursing home cannot be a witness. Can an absentee, let me see if I talk about returning your ballot on the second slide. So let's go to the next slide. Okay, somebody was asking, I'm hoping I can't remember if I talk about it, how you return your ballot. There are two ways to return your ballot. You can mail it in, and that means you can put it in a blue box or put it in any normal mail facility. You can take it to a post office and have it received at the post office, but that's still mail. The other thing is in person. And yes, you can return your ballot in person. There's limits as to who can return a ballot. The voter or a near relative or a legal guardian are the only people that can return a ballot. So your friend can't do it, your neighbor can't do it, only you as a voter or a near relative. Can my daughter FedEx her ballot to me and then I return it? Yes. Yes, near relative is a child. Or alternatively, your daughter can just FedEx it to the Board of Elections. And because that FedEx works like the mail, it just costs you a lot more. What was I going to say? Currently, although I'm sure you've been maybe haven't been following, the drama at the Board of Elections about some of these changes that are happening. Currently, you have to sign a logbook that says where you say who you are, and if you're not the voter, what your relationship is to the person whose ballot you're returning. So, for example, I filled out, I returned my husband's ballot, and I had to fill out a logbook that said my name and his name and that he was my husband. And currently you have to do that both at the Board of Elections. The only place right now to return your ballot is at the Board of Elections. There are no remote or contactless drop boxes right now. There is a discussion of how you're gonna, that people can return the ballot to an early voting site. Right now, and I'm going to go with this, that this is going to be this is the information I want you to have, because it could change, but let's not depend on it changing. Right now, if you want to return a ballot to an early voting site, you will be standing in line with all the other voters, and you will have to log in your ballot, just like you were to have logged it in if you went to the Board of Elections. There's some talk of that changing, but let's not depend on that right now. So if you want to, so voting your ballot right now and waiting until October 15th to figure out how you're going to return it, I don't know, doesn't strike me as being the smartest way to go. You know, if you voted your ballot, just return it. Either return it by mail or go drive to the Board of Elections and log it in. That's my advice. Now, some people have questions about the postmark. The postmark really only comes into play at the very end. The rule is that the ballot must be returned and received by November 3rd, 5 o'clock on November 3rd, which means that you cannot return your ballot to a precinct, a voting precinct on election day. But you can mail it on election day. And that's where the postmark comes in. Because if it's postmarked on election day and there's proof that you mailed it, then they will count it for some period of time. Right now, it's 3 days after the election, so that if your ballot actually arrives at the Board of Elections by Friday, they will count it. There's some talk of extending that delivery period. But the postmark and the fact that it must be mailed on that won't change. So once again, try not to do anything. This election is just not an election to do things last minute. It's an election you need to get your voting plan, make your plan, and execute your plan as soon as you're ready to vote, so that you don't run into any of the problems that people are talking about. Okay, was there another question? I might have missed it.
I have a question.
Okay.
Yeah, I put it in the chat box, but it's hard.
Okay.
The question is, at least in Illinois, I was told, I'm in Illinois right now. I heard that if you have an absentee ballot, if you have applied for an absentee ballot and one has been sent to you, that if you were to go and vote in person, your vote would be marked as provisional until all of the absentee ballots had been looked through. Something like that.
Okay. Are you planning on voting in North Carolina, or are you planning on voting in Illinois?
I'm voting in North Carolina.
Okay. So here's the rule, and this is, every state has different rules and different policies and different laws.
Mm-hmm.
So this is how it works in North Carolina. In North Carolina, nobody knows except you and the staff at the Board of Elections whether you applied for an absentee ballot. None of the polling place workers, none of the precinct workers will know that you applied for an absentee ballot and that you received one. The only thing they will know is if you voted that ballot. And if you voted that ballot, your name will be removed from the poll book. And if your name is removed from the poll book, either at early voting or at election day voting, you cannot vote a regular ballot. And that's true for anybody who comes in to vote and their name's not in the poll book. Their name may not be in the poll book for a lot of reasons, that they moved, or they, I don't know, they're just other reasons why their name may not be in the poll book. And then you vote a provisional ballot. And if you happen to, okay, so let's say there are a couple of things I wanted to talk about. Maybe I'm probably getting ahead of myself, but it sounds like we're talking a little bit about addressing problems in this screen and some security issues. Okay, if you have a ballot at home and you're thinking, gosh, I just want to vote in person, I feel more comfortable voting in person, You can do that in North Carolina. You just show up and vote. Nobody's going to know that you have that ballot at home. And you don't need to get any permission. You don't need to tell anybody, oh, by the way, I've got a ballot at home. You do not need to tell anybody. They don't know. It's none of their business. And you don't need to ask permission. You don't need to bring your ballot and spoil it. You don't need to do any of that. And as a matter of fact, I recommend that you do not bring your ballot to the polling place. It just confuses people to have multitudes of ballots out there. Now I don't know if any of you have looked at have received an absentee ballot and have looked at it, but there's a code on the envelope and a code on the ballot that indicates that this is an absentee ballot, that it's not a normal regular ballot. That's an absentee ballot. So if you were to bring it with you, they would know that. But we got a lot of new poll workers this year, and they're just going to be dealing with a lot of stuff. So let's not stress them out and make them handle ballots that they don't need to handle. Somebody asked another question here. Was about, oh yeah, if there's a problem. Yes, they're supposed, if you were had difficulty following instructions and you didn't fill out the container envelope properly, because they can't even look at the ballot until they've already passed the container envelope. It's passed the container envelope test. And that's what it means when it says accepted. It says that the envelope is complete, and they're going to accept that envelope. And the envelope needs to have your signature and your witness's signature and your witness's name and address printed on it. That's what needs to be there. If for some reason you left something out, they will contact you. They're supposed to contact you within 24 hours and give you, tell you what you need to do to correct that problem. Okay, does anybody want to have concerns about the security of the ballots? What happens to those ballots that you don't vote? I could talk about that. If you don't want me to talk about it, I won't. Any questions about that? Sure. Okay, so let's say somebody finds your ballot that you went ahead and voted, and you were remiss and not careful with your ballot. You left it in your car, it got dropped someplace, whatever. This is your absentee ballot. Well, for one thing, as I told you, there's codes on it. There's a code with the absentee ballot on the envelope. So an absentee ballot by itself is worthless. It has to have the matching envelope. And that's one thing you do need to be careful if you're voting with your husband, that you don't mix up your ballots and put them in the wrong envelope, because your ballot is matched to your envelope. Your husband's ballot is matched to his envelope. If you're all sitting at the table and voting together and trading the envelopes back and forth to do the witness part of things, just make sure you put the right ballot in the right envelope. And like I said, there are codes on it, so you can do that. But anyway, so a stray ballot is not a security issue. Now, if somebody were to find your ballot and your envelope, and they were to fill it out and impersonate you, sign your name and get a witness and return it, that is election fraud, and that's what happened in Bladen County, and that's a felony. And they got caught, and they will get caught. They've got a whole team of investigators that are looking for that kind of thing. So, and those are in the post-election audits are designed to catch inconsistencies like that, where there are two people voting at the same time. Now, I will say that, let's say that you got your absentee ballot, or somebody you know was hemming and hawing and waited until middle to the end of October to request a ballot. And they got it. And they're thinking that they're going to go vote in person, but they decide, I want to send in my absentee ballot. They send in their absentee ballot, and they're checking to see whether it was accepted. You know, they're checking ballot tracks, they're checking voter search. And then all of a sudden, my God, it's October 30th or October 31st or whatever. And I don't have proof that my ballot was actually received and accepted at the Board of Elections. You can still go vote. If for some reason you vote in person and then your absentee ballot arrives after you, they will contact you and say, what happened here? And you will say, well, I was just nervous and I didn't know. And they will say, fine. And they will count your in-person vote and they will throw out your absentee vote, or they will void it. And so I highly recommend that after if you vote absentee, that you check to make sure that it was accepted and that you have voted. And if you can't get resolution on that and you try calling and you can't get resolution, go vote in person. It's not a crime. Okay. In-person voting. In-person voting will be safe. You know, they're going to have tons of PPE for everybody. They've specially picked larger voting facilities to allow for social distancing. So I can't tell you what the lines are going to be like, but I suspect that most of the people who are in line will be behaving themselves, social distancing, and wearing masks. Early voting is very popular, and historically about half of all voters have used it, and it's available for 17 days before the election, starting on October 15th. And a lot of people prefer it, and it's perfectly safe. Okay, next question. Okay, voter registration. You know, that's a real issue this year. The voter registration numbers are way down because a lot of the places that new voters usually go register are, with COVID-19, are not available. So it's a little harder to reach out to those voters. They have created an online voter registration portal, which is very good, but you do have to already have to have a North Carolina driver's license for that. And then vote411.org, we have all these links to either the portals, the online portals, or we have places where you can download, get the forms, download them, and print them out so that you can mail them in. And more importantly, let's see, why don't we go to the next slide? More importantly is vote411.org, especially in Wake County, we have almost every candidate. There's only a handful of candidates that have not filled out the survey. So we have information on almost every single candidate. I want to say there's probably like 3 or 4 that have not filled out their survey, but we asked them questions. So yeah, somebody just said, can you register to vote at early voting sites? Yes. So if you miss the voter registration deadline, which is October 9th, you can register to vote at an early voting site. And you should go online and check. If you do what's known as same-day registration, you will need to go, you will need to bring some ID. And that ID is not necessarily a photo ID. It's an ID that is your proof of where you live. So a utility bill, a bank statement, a W-2 form, anything that has that's somewhat official and has your name and address on it. That's what they're looking for, that you are a legal resident of North Carolina and you can vote here. And it works really well. Somebody said Chatham County. Yeah, vote411.org. I think if you put in your address, your Chatham County address, that'll all come up. Or you can just Google Chatham County Board of Elections. I don't know their URL offhand. But if you go into the ncsbe.gov website or vote411.org, you can get the Chatham County information. And Chatham County is participating in vote411.org too, so there's a lot of information on all the candidates that will be on a Chatham County ballot as well. And we've got great response rates on all the statewide candidates. All the judges, I think we may be missing one judge. All the Council of State candidates, we may be missing like one or two candidates, and even the Senate and the governor. We've got all of those candidates have participated. So they've you have their contact information if you want to learn more about them, and they have responded to our questions that we gave them. So you can do kind of an apples and apples comparison of the candidates on certain issues. Okay. And then, so those are some of the basic requests, basic information, the websites to get information. Unfortunately, or fortunately, part of the, COVID-19 response is that we're all having to do a lot more stuff online. We're all having to up our digital skills, and so most things are online these days, but they're available to a lot of people, and they're very good quality. It's just a matter of reaching people and reaching people who may not have the computers or the computer skill. So talking to your friends, talking to your church members, your church family, talking to your neighbors. We all have to help each other make sure we have the best information as we go into vote this year. That's kind of extent of my, I think my presentation. I'm happy to answer any more questions.
Marian, this is Chris Abrams here.
Yeah.
Can you give us some more information or other information about some of the other states? What's happening in the other states?
I would prefer not to be quite honest.
Okay.
Because a lot of the hype and a lot of the fear is based on things that are happening in other states. And our message is we need to vote. Mm-hmm. And we need to focus on voting in North Carolina. And knowing the problems that Pennsylvania has, or the problems that Georgia has, that's not going to help. It's not going to help us. And it may confuse us. And just like, I can't remember, somebody was asking about Ohio has a different rule about voting in person if you've requested an absentee ballot. And to talk, I really, if you have a family member or a friend in another state, Vote411 is a national platform. They should go to vote411.org and find out what's going on in that state so that they can get the most up-to-date information on voting. The most important thing, at least from the league's perspective, is that we all need to vote. Mm-hmm. Everybody needs to vote. And having the most accurate information, not the, and that you vote with confidence and not with fear. And that, so I read about what's happening in other states, but I try to put that outside of what we're doing here, because the problems that they're having may not be the problems that we're having. So there are a lot of, I mean, North Carolina has a pretty storied history of voting problems, and I think we're one of the most litigious states in the country for resolving a lot of things in the courts, and that hasn't changed. We're still suing each other a lot. But North Carolina has some really good things going for it. We have no excuse absentee voting.
Yeah.
We start counting, or we start tabulating or scanning our ballots well in advance of election day. We should have a really good handle. If people don't wait to the last minute, we should have a really good handle on how North Carolina has voted on election night. And that may not be true in every other state. So I want people to, we have a pretty robust Board of Elections that investigates irregularities. We have a pretty transparent approval process starting next Tuesday. Each county Board of Elections will start approving the absentee ballots. Those are public meetings, so either public in person or public online. So you can check to see, you can watch it and see what's going on. The post-election canvas is open to the public in every single county. You can find out how the provisional ballots are approved, and which ones are approved and which ones aren't, and they have to give reasons why they don't approve them. They do a sample hand-eye count to test the validity of the tabulators, that they're actually reading the ballots. So it's not a perfect system, but it's a fairly transparent system. And I want people to feel confident that when they make the effort to go and vote, that their vote will be counted. And I really want people to go and vote. And it is going to take more effort this year. This is just one of those years where we're all going to have to work harder to exercise our right to vote.
So Stuart has a question for you now, I think.
Yes. This may be outside the topic of your talk, but can you kind of give us an overview of what's going on with the North Carolina Board of Elections and the two people that resigned and the like?
Yeah. It is pretty much out of my, definitely my expertise. But I did read I have read a lot about it, and I actually read the minutes of the meeting this morning. And what's going on is that there are all these lawsuits out there about how to process absentee ballots. And the state board and the legislature in the fall, before this, or maybe it was in January. It was just as the pandemic was, maybe it was in March. Okay, I'm sorry. There's just been so much stuff, it's hard for me to keep track. But the legislature, as part of the COVID response, recognized that voting is going to be more difficult this year, and that more people were going to want to vote absentee by mail. And absentee by mail voting has always existed in North Carolina. And the basic process that I explained to you is how it's been operating for a very long time. It's just that it's not very it hasn't been very popular. Very few people have used it. So all of a sudden, if you're going from a few thousand people, or a few 10,000 people voting absentee, to hundreds of thousands and perhaps even millions of people voting absentee, it's, the process needs to be streamlined. So what they did was they got rid of one of the witnesses, and they did a few other things. Because remember, after the Bladen County issue, they redid quite a bit of the rules on absentee voting. So in 2019, they tightened up a lot of the absentee voting because of some of the abuses that were uncovered in Bladen County. And some of those things they're keeping, and that's where you get into the who can return an absentee ballot and the fact that the requests are secret. Those two things are directly from the Bladen County legislative response to that. But they realized that that there are just going to be a lot more people who are homebound and who are going to need to vote absentee by mail. So they agreed to get rid of the witness. And I think, they did a few other things to make absentee by mail voting easier. But they didn't do a lot of things. They didn't, they didn't create those drop boxes. They just didn't loosen up. They just didn't loosen up a lot of stuff. So, of course, we sued to say, you need to make it easier for a lot of people to vote, not just certain people. So, and that's where the whole cure process came in, the whole idea that they had to tell you if they rejected your ballot for one reason or another. They had to give you an opportunity to fix it. And that's from the lawsuit that we filed. The League of Women Voters filed that lawsuit, saying that you couldn't just summarily decide not to count ballots. You had to have a reason, and you had to give people an opportunity to address that. Because I knew it was just going to be more difficult and more complicated. So anyway, there are tons of these lawsuits on a variety of every little aspect of absentee voting that the legislature did not address in the COVID response. And as a matter of fact, one just came out yesterday saying that people who are blind have to have a different mechanism to return an absentee ballot, because an absentee ballot, if you're blind, you're not able to mark it. They need to make an accommodation, and there is an accommodation that they have to actually do now. They were going, well, we don't really want to bother with it. So anyway, so there are a bunch of these lawsuits and a bunch of these accommodations. And what happened, my understanding is what happened is that some of them are court driven and some of them are anticipatory of what the court was going to issue. And the State Board of Elections said, okay, these are the things we have to do because the court told us we have to do them. And some of them, we're thinking that the court is going to tell us what we have to do. And so they had this meeting a couple weeks ago saying, these are the changes that we should be making to accommodate both the requirements that the court has already told us and what we're hearing from the court, that because the clock is ticking, people are voting. So and then they issued these two what are known as numbered memos on Tuesday with these new guidance that what the counties were going to have to do. And I think that when the Republican members of the board saw those guidances, those numbered memos, not only the Republican members of the board, but the Republican Party said, no, we don't like that. And they were, so they're now countersuing to, to rescind some of those recommendations. So a lot of it is just really up in the air. So, and so that's where they resigned. They resigned in protest. And I'm really, really hoping that 2 new members come on that board real soon, because you can't have an election without a board of elections. I don't even want to think about that. So I don't want to think about it. It's way above my pay grade to think about how that's going to get resolved. But I think that they're going to appoint 2 new people. They're going to maybe go back and revisit some of those guidances that were issued on Tuesday. I mean, this is just me guessing. But in the meantime, absentee balloting is going on. And if you just follow the rules, if you just do it right the first time, then all these other things are going to be irrelevant. So in terms of what I want voters to take away is follow the instructions. Put the information on that container envelope. Don't worry about fixing it later. If you do it right the first time, you don't have to worry about fixing it later. Return it in the way that was originally designed, either by mail or by FedEx, or if you want to do it in person, just go to the Board of Elections and fill out that logbook, and don't wait to figure out what they're going to do at early voting if they're going to have a different system. Just vote. If you want to vote absentee by mail, just get your ballot, vote it, and return it, and don't worry about it. That's my takeaway. And all the drama, unfortunately, this election is just drama filled. I mean, it's just drama filled, and we just need to kind of power through it and realize we're Americans, we vote, and we're just gonna vote like we always do. And we're gonna vote right the first time. I mean, do it right the first time, and don't worry about how it's gonna be corrected if it's wrong. And we'll deal with that later. That's my take on it. I mean, I've read it all. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not a legal expert. I understand where some of this stuff was coming from, but I'm not a lawyer. I can't tell you what the judge is going to say or do. And even if I know what the judge said, I read the court decision, it doesn't necessarily mean I understand how it's going to be implemented. And that's where we are on that. But I'm hoping that this just kind of gets resolved quickly, because it's just more drama that we don't need.
No, we don't need any more drama, that's for sure. Is somebody working for, they say that a lot of the ballots that are not accepted come from the Black community. Is somebody working on that?
Yeah, I think they are. They're trying to figure out where the problem is. Is it bad ballot design, and that it's confusing for people who are not getting, not the ballot? Is it bad envelope design? Because it's not the ballot, it's the envelope. And is it bad envelope design that people who are less experienced are having more trouble with it? Does it need a better outreach education to people who have not voted absentee by mail before, or who are not as clued in, well, not clued in, but who are not as who are just not getting the information. So it's very troubling. And part of the guidance that was coming out for the Board of Elections was trying to get some consistency, to make sure that every county was doing it the same way. There was, I think, originally some concern that there may have been some discretion, let's put it that way, in the issue of legibility. Is it legible? There may have been some discretion applied in, well, what's an address? What do you have to have to constitute an acceptable address? And I know they put out some guidance on that. I think part of the problem they may be, and this is just a guess on my part, is that the ballot envelopes were pretty much designed by the State Board of Elections, but they were actually printed by each county. And I don't know if you've seen your Wake County envelope, but your Wake County envelope has your signature highlighted in yellow, and all 3 lines of the witness section highlighted in yellow. So the signature line is highlighted in yellow, print name line is highlighted in yellow, and the address line is highlighted in yellow. I've heard that some counties only highlighted the signature line and I don't know if that's true, because I haven't seen it. And the fact that somebody may have, when they're filling out the ballot, go, oh, I just have to fill out what's highlighted in yellow. I don't have to fill out everything. And once again, that's bad design, because the instructions, if you read the instructions, but we're all terrible about reading instructions. We're just notorious as a society. We're just notorious about, we don't read instructions. We figure, well, we know how to do stuff and we just do it. So that may be part of it. I don't know how much of that's part of it, and how much of it we need to. I've been doing these kind of talks to as many groups as I can. I've been encouraging other people to take my information and share it, and just talk about this issue, and getting people to think about it and be ready, if they're going to vote absentee by mail. And it could be that there's some groups that are just not doing it. Partly, I don't want to say it's because they're uncomfortable with absentee by mail voting. I mean, there's a number, because historically because of this whole, you know, that it was all kind of a black box as to which ballots got accepted and which didn't. That African American ballots were historically rejected at a higher rate, and you don't really know to what extent that was by design. And I think that it's probably safe to assume that in some jurisdictions it was. So that's where we get into the whole cure thing, is like, no, you can't do that. You have to explain to the voter why their ballot was not accepted. And you have to explain it to them in a way that they can fix it. And, but that doesn't necessarily mean that a lot of groups are comfortable with absentee by mail voting. So they're encouraging people to vote early. And so the people who are voting absentee by mail may just not be getting the same level of, not so much instruction, but just encouragement. You know, if you're being told you don't really want to do this because it's not reliable, but you go ahead and do it anyway because you need to, you know, you want to be safe. So, you know, that is actually one of the advantages of turning your ballot in person, because they do kind of tell you, yeah, you left this blank, give you an opportunity to fix it. But yeah, so I know that they're looking at that a lot. And certainly other communities where English isn't their first language, that's a problem. Because I don't know that to what extent the ballots and the container envelopes are in other languages. I just don't know. It may be in certain counties you can request it in advance that you want it in another language. But I don't know very much about that.
Maria, I just want to say, going back to the Afro-Americans, ballots being returned a lot, because a lot of the older Afro-Americans, they don't know how to write. And so they have been marking X, and then they have their daughters or sons, some family member write their name. But now when they are matching that when they're matching it, they can match it, it's supposed to be an X. So what we are trying to do is educate them about that with the X, and then having someone else write their name. So you either have someone write their names there and sit at the bottom where you're filling it out for this person, as opposed to them putting the X and mailing it. So
well,
we're trying very hard to work on that.
Is that in North Carolina, they are not allowed to do signature matching. So there is no signature match, which I do want to emphasize that. So the X that you're talking about, that's perfectly legitimate, as long as the voter put the X down. That's perfectly legitimate. Little trickier when it comes to the witness. I don't know about that, but definitely the voter can sign with an X. And usually if the person is signing with an X, although not always, they're getting some assistance in either reading the ballot or marking the ballot. And there's a section on the container envelope that if you get assistance in reading the ballot or marking the ballot or putting the ballot in the envelope or any of that, that person who's helping you needs to fill out that section. But
Well,
anybody can do that.
Yeah, that's what I was talking about. We make sure that whoever's assisting that person to do that absentee ballot, fill that part out.
Yeah, but don't worry about signature matching because it's not happening.
Well, we're just going to do everything to make sure that it goes through.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that the more we talk about this, the more we explain the hows and the whys. I think for some people, understanding why we're doing this is very helpful. For example, the whole witness. I mean, a lot of people just, why are we doing witnesses? Well, I'll tell you, it's because North Carolina does not do signature matching. Most states that have gotten rid of their witnesses do a signature match. And we don't do that. And signature matching, as you can imagine, has a whole host of other problems of people's ballots being rejected because their signature changed, or I don't know, they were having a bad day or whatever. So not doing signature matching is a very good thing. I think personally that a lot more ballots are excluded due to signature matching, which North Carolina does not do, than are due to witness problems. So encouraging people to take the whole witness part of the container envelope seriously. Really, take it seriously. Get that person to sign it, write their name and their address. I think that people understand why that is important is, I think, helpful to getting that done. And historically, the reason that absentee ballots are rejected are two reasons. One, they came in too late. They missed the deadline. And that's most of the ones that are rejected is they missed the deadline. And the second reason is the voter forgot to sign the form. So, if we just tackle getting it done early, don't put this off. Don't wait to the last minute to do it. And you just encourage people to sign their name. You've really accomplished a lot. And the whole witness thing, yeah, they'll fix it. Witnessing is kind of a pain, but they'll fix it. Any other? Well, I guess I've taken an hour of your time. And you have my email address, and I am very happy to answer any questions that come up that you as an individual or you want to ask on behalf of a friend. I'm happy to answer questions. Happy to do it. So just get in touch with me in the weeks to come if you need any more help.
I think I have learned a year's worth in this past hour, and I certainly appreciate you coming and talking to us.
And just vote, please just try to, cut through the noise and just vote, because the more we pay attention to the noise and to the drama, the more we second guess ourselves and the more we distrust the system. And we need to, right now, we need to trust. We do, we really do.
Get through the chaos that's been created. My husband and I have already sent in our ballots and they were accepted and we're all good to go.
I mean, for me, I'm not telling people to vote absentee because a lot of people are just not comfortable with it, and I'm fine with that. But for me, it was such a relief. It was just such a relief. I'm done. It's done.
Yeah, I wish they could. I wish they could turn off the TV ads in our house. Though.
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I'm done. And the other thing is, one of the things I did kind of realize as I was doing it, it's a very long ballot, and I knew who I was going to vote for. I mean, I know I feel like I know all these people on a first name basis, and that even goes down the ticket because I do candidate forums for all the local things. And even so, it took me quite a bit of time to actually fill out the ballot. You know, it was time, you know. So if you can imagine people who are maybe not as prepared when they get ready to fill out their ballot, it's gonna take time. And hopefully they go all the way to the bottom and fill out everything, because all those local races, your county commissioner, your school board, all those people, they really determine what happens in your life. They really do.
Yeah, yeah. And it's a very thoughtful process. It should be a very thoughtful process to cast your vote.
Yeah.
And yes, yeah, yes. Mary, would you like to add anything?
No, I just want to, Marian, thank you again so very, very much. And we appreciate your time and just the great information that you shared with
Yeah,
us.
and please share it. You've got my slides. If you want to share them with anybody,
Thank you.
I'm fine with that.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you. Thank you so
Bye.
much. Yes. And
Thank
Mary, do you want to give us an idea of what's happening next time we meet?
Sure. Marie, you want to?
Okay.
Well,
Oh,
first,
she didn't get,
before
yes.
Marian, yeah, I don't know if Marian has left, but we probably want to